But one thing was clear to everyone in the room. The case wasn't as closed as it had seemed. The truth had been hidden under assumptions, misunderstandings, and rushed judgments. The judge announced that the court would take a short break while he reviewed all the new evidence privately. People stood up slowly, still absorbing what they had just seen. The teen let out a shaky breath, feeling a small weight lift off his shoulders. The visitor placed a hand on the teen's shoulder and told him to stay strong. They assured him that things were moving in the right direction now. The teen nodded, grateful beyond words. As people stepped out of the room, conversations buzzed quietly around them. Some whispered about how shocked they were. Others talked about how they had misjudged the teen, based on nothing more than being in the wrong place. A few simply shook their heads, realizing that things are not always what they seem. When the courtroom finally emptied, the teen sat down and waited. He didn't know what would happen next, but for the first time since the incident, he felt hopeful. Everything he had been trying to say was finally being heard. All because of one phone call he had almost been too afraid to make. He looked toward the door where the visitor had entered and felt grateful for their support. Without them, none of the truth would have surfaced. He might have walked out of that courtroom with a judgment he didn't deserve. Now, as the minutes passed, the teen realized something important. Sometimes people misunderstand. Sometimes the truth gets hidden behind assumptions. But sometimes, with the right help, the truth finds its way to the surface. And in that quiet moment, waiting for the judge to return, the teen felt a small spark inside him, a spark that whispered that maybe, just maybe, things were finally turning in his favor. The courtroom felt different that morning. It's almost like the air carried something lighter, something calmer. The teen walked in quietly, not drawing attention to himself, though many eyes followed him. People who had been there during the last hearing remembered how tense things were, and how everything changed because of the single phone call he made. Today, everyone wanted to see what would happen next. Even the security guard at the door gave him a small nod, as if silently cheering for him. The teen took a seat on the wooden bench near the front. He sat with his hands folded on his lap, calm but alert. He wasn't trying to look brave, but there was a quiet strength in how he held himself. He had been scared many times through this whole situation, but now things felt different. He knew the truth was finally coming out, and for the first time in weeks he felt like he could breathe normally. The judge entered the room a few minutes later. The judge looked more serious than usual, but not in the same way as before. There was no frustration or impatience this time. Instead, the judge seemed focused, maybe even thoughtful, as if reviewing everything that had happened and everything that had been revealed. The teen could tell that the judge wasn't looking at him the way people usually did. There was no judgment in the judge's eyes now, only curiosity and a sense of responsibility. When the hearing finally began, the judge cleared their throat lightly and spoke with a calm voice. The room quieted at once. The judge explained that the case had been reopened because new evidence had come forward. It was only fair to look at everything again. The person the teen had called, the one who had shown up with proof, was also present now, sitting just behind the teen. Their presence alone made the whole situation feel solid. They didn't speak right away. They waited for the right moment, knowing the process needed to follow the right steps. The judge asked the teen if he wanted to share anything before they reviewed the new material. The teen stood slowly, his voice steady but gentle. He didn't give a long speech. He didn't complain or accuse anyone. Simply explained that he hadn't been able to speak earlier because he felt no one would believe him. Said he didn't want trouble, he didn't want to argue, and he didn't want to disrespect the court. He just wanted the truth to be heard. His honesty seemed to move many of the people in the room. Even the business owner, who had been firm and frustrated before, looked down for a moment, as if rethinking everything. It was clear that nobody had expected the teen to handle the situation with such calmness and dignity. The judge nodded, listening carefully. Then the judge turned to the person who had brought the evidence. With the judge's permission, that person stepped forward and placed the documents and the video recording on the table. The room stayed completely silent as the judge reviewed the footage. On the screen, the truth unfolded clearly. The teen had not caused any damage, had actually been trying to stop it from happening. The video showed him warning another group of people to leave the area before things went wrong. It even showed him trying to call for help. The judge paused the video at one point and looked up, surprised but also relieved. The business owner leaned forward, squinting at the screen. Slowly, the owner's expression changed from frustration to realization. The misunderstanding had been huge, and it was all because the teen had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. When the video ended, the judge asked the business owner if they wanted to respond. The owner took a deep breath before speaking. They admitted that they had been quick to judge because they were stressed and upset. They apologized for assuming. The teen was guilty and said they should have taken more time to understand what really happened. The room stayed soft and quiet, as if everyone was processing the moment. The judge looked at the teen again, this time with a gentle expression. The judge said that the case would now be closed for real, but in a very different way than before. The teen was cleared of all accusations. There was no fine, no penalty, nothing holding him down anymore. But the judge didn't stop there. The judge spoke about listening, especially to people who don't always get the chance to speak. The judge talked about how easy it is to jump to conclusions and how important it is to give space for truth to come out. It wasn't a long speech, but it was a meaningful one, and everyone in the room felt the weight of it. The teen stood quietly, absorbing every word. It felt like the judge wasn't just talking to the court, but also talking directly to him, acknowledging everything he had gone through. When the judge officially announced that the teen was free to go, a soft wave of relief spread across the courtroom. The tension that had built up over days and weeks finally lifted. The teen let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding, turned slightly and saw the person who had helped him give a nod, a silent sign that everything was finally okay. Interestingly, even the people who had once looked at the teen with doubt were now looking at him with respect. Not because he had won a case, but because he had handled the situation with patience, honesty, and quiet strengths, something many adults admired. As the teen stepped out of the courtroom, the sunlight outside felt different. Warmer, brighter, almost like the world itself was welcoming him back. He walked slowly down the steps, taking in everything: the fresh air, the open sky, the freedom he now felt. The person who had supported him walked beside him, matching his pace. They didn't say much at first. They didn't need to. The quiet moment was peaceful on its own. After a few steps, the person simply said they were proud of how he handled himself. The teen smiled, a small but genuine smile. He hadn't heard those words in a long time, and they meant more than he could explain. As they reached the sidewalk, the person asked what he wanted to do next. The teen shrugged lightly, saying he wasn't sure yet, but he wanted to make good use of this second chance. He wanted to learn from the whole experience and maybe even help others who might find themselves misunderstood, just like he was. The person liked the idea and encouraged him to follow it whenever he felt ready. They reminded him that his voice mattered, even when he thought no one would listen. The teen looked ahead, feeling stronger than before. What happened in court hadn't just cleared his name, it had changed something inside him. It gave him confidence, courage, and a sense of direction. He walked a little taller, knowing he didn't just survive a difficult situation, he overcame it. In the end, the story wasn't just about the judge who almost closed a case too early. It was about a teen who trusted the truth enough to speak up at the right moment. It was about a single phone call made with hope and determination. It was about people learning to listen, even when they thought they already knew the answer. That day wasn't just the end of a case. It was the beginning of a new chapter for the teen, a chapter filled with possibilities, strength, and a clearer understanding of his own worth. And as he walked away from the courthouse, the world felt bigger, kinder, and more open than it had in a long time. The courtroom felt unusually still that morning, almost as if the walls themselves were waiting for something to happen. People whispered among themselves, flipping through papers, adjusting jackets, or glancing at the clock on the far wall. It was one of those small-town courts where everyone knew someone. In most cases were predictable, routine, and over before anyone could settle into their seat at the front of the room. The judge settled into his large wooden chair. He had handled thousands of cases over the years, and this one seemed no different. To him, it appeared simple: a teenage boy accused of causing damage to a local shop. The evidence was presented neatly in folders. Statements were already typed up, and the shop owner had spoken confidently about what he believed happened. The judge felt certain the matter would be resolved quickly. The teen sat alone at the small table to the right. He didn't look angry or stubborn, just tired and a little unsure of what to do. His hands were clasped together tightly, his shoulders slightly hunched. He wore a simple shirt and pants that looked a bit worn, as if they had seen too many hurried mornings. He didn't have a lawyer sitting beside him. He didn't even have a parent with him. He looked like someone who didn't have anyone to speak on his behalf. People in the room whispered quietly, trying to look without seeming rude. Some felt a bit sorry for him. Others simply believed the shop owner's version of events. After all, the teen had been at the scene, and a couple of witnesses insisted they saw him near the broken window. It seemed enough to convince most people that he had done it. The shop owner sat on the opposite side, arms crossed, lips pressed tightly together. He had run his business for almost 20 years, and the broken window had upset him more than he expected. He felt someone had to take responsibility, and the teen looked like the most obvious culprit. The prosecutor spoke first, summarizing the statements and describing the damage. He spoke casually, as though he'd repeated the same lines many times before. Nothing he said was surprising. Nothing seemed uncertain. He painted a picture that made the incident sound straightforward. The judge listened, nodding from time to time. He didn't seem bothered or unsure. In his mind, the facts were stacking up in one direction. He had seen similar situations many times, and they almost always ended the same way, with a warning, a fine, or some kind of community work. The teen sat quietly, eyes lowered. He didn't interrupt, didn't complain, didn't shake his head or show frustration. It was as if he had accepted whatever the court believed about him, even if he knew it wasn't the full truth. When the prosecutor finished, the judge adjusted his glasses and glanced toward the teen. "So," the judge said, his voice calm, "before I make a final decision, is there anything you would like to say?" It was more of a formality than a sincere invitation. Most teens in his courtroom said very little. Some apologized, some mumbled a few words. Rarely did any of them change the outcome. The boy slowly lifted his face. His eyes weren't angry. They weren't scared. They were more like someone hoping, just hoping to be heard for a moment. He opened his mouth slightly, as if trying to decide whether speaking would help or only make things worse. But before he could say anything, the judge began gathering paperwork. "If not, I'll go ahead," and the teen's hand rose just a little, not confidently, but enough to stop the judge mid-sentence. It wasn't a bold gesture. It was more like a quiet plea. People in the courtroom turned their heads. A few raised their eyebrows. Even the shop owner unscrewed his arms and leaned forward a bit. The judge paused, surprised that the boy had stopped him. "Yes?" the judge asked. The boy swallowed hard. His voice, when he spoke, was soft but steady. I do want to say something." The judge leaned back slightly, giving him room to speak. "Go ahead." The teen hesitated for a moment. Then he said, "Before you decide anything, I just want to make one phone call." The courtroom went silent. Not a single whisper remained. It wasn't that the request was outrageous. It just wasn't something people heard often. A teenager in the middle of a court hearing, asking for a phone call? It sounded like something out of a movie. The prosecutor frowned slightly, unsure what to make of it. The shop owner stared with disbelief, as though the boy was wasting everyone's time. A few people in the courtroom exchanged confused glances. The judge rubbed his forehead. "A phone call? Right now?" The teen nodded slowly. "Yes, sir." "Just one. It's important." The judge looked at him carefully. He couldn't quite understand why the boy seemed so calm, almost certain. Most kids in his courtroom panicked, cried, or argued, but this boy wasn't doing any of that. Instead, he asked for a phone call with the quiet confidence of someone who believed the entire situation might change. Because of it, the judge sighed softly. He didn't see any harm in allowing it. In his mind, the call probably wouldn't change anything. But something about the boy's tone made him pause. Maybe it was the way he spoke, not demanding, not desperate, just quietly resolved. "All right," the judge said. "I'll allow it." but it needs to be quick." The teen nodded again. He stood up slowly, as if his legs were stiff from sitting too long. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, older-looking phone. No one else spoke. The judge waited, leaning forward slightly, curious despite himself. The teen scrolled through his contacts for a moment. His thumb hovered over a single name, one that seemed to bring him a bit of comfort. Then he tapped it. The ringing filled the courtroom, echoing softly through the quiet space. People leaned in without meaning to. Even the prosecutor's expression shifted from confidence to curiosity. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Then someone answered. The voice on the other end was calm, deep, and carried a sense of quiet authority. "Hello?" The boy's expression changed ever so slightly, relief mixed with caution. He glanced up at the judge, then spoke into the phone. "They need you here," he said softly. "Right now." The room seemed to freeze. No one knew who the person on the call was. No one understood why the teen believed this call mattered. But the tone of the voice on the other end, steady, serious, controlled, made everyone sit up a bit straighter. "All right," the voice replied. "I'm on my way." The teen ended the call slowly and sat back down. He didn't look nervous. He didn't look proud. He simply looked like someone who had finally done the one thing he knew might help him. The judge watched him, more puzzled than before. Something about the boy's calmness didn't match the situation. Teenagers in court rarely looked that steady. The judge tapped his pen on the desk. "Who was that?" he asked. The boy folded his hands again. "Someone who can explain everything," he said quietly. The judge wasn't sure whether to believe him, but something inside him, something shaped by years of experience, whispered that this case might not be as simple as he thought. The courtroom remained strangely still. People waited. No one spoke. No one moved. Even the shop owner seemed unsure now. What had started as a routine case was suddenly becoming something else, something unexpected, something heavier, something that made the judge feel a hint of uncertainty. And as the boy sat there quietly, waiting, the entire room sensed the same thing. This case wasn't closed at all. The courtroom remained quiet after the teen ended the phone call. People shifted in their seats, exchanging looks that showed more confusion than certainty. The judge, who had expected to close the case minutes earlier, now found himself waiting for someone he had never met and didn't know anything about. Even so, a small part of him was curious. The teen's calmness wasn't normal, especially in a situation like this. The teen sat still at his table. He didn't fidget or glance around the room. He simply looked ahead, almost peaceful, as if he knew he had done the only thing he could do. Some people in the courtroom watched him quietly, trying to guess what kind of person he had called and why it mattered so much. The shop owner, who had walked in that morning prepared to win his case, now looked uncertain. He kept glancing at the door as though expecting someone important to walk through it. His arms were no longer crossed, and his face wasn't as tight or angry as before. It was clear he was rethinking things, even if only a little. The prosecutor shifted his papers, no longer as sure of himself. He looked over the files again, searching for any detail he might have overlooked. The teen's confidence had bothered him. It was rare for someone accused of something to be that calm, unless they had something to support their innocence. Minutes passed, each one slower than the last. The judge kept glancing at the clock, then at the teen, then back at the door. The silence felt heavier with each passing moment. Finally, the door opened gently, and a tall figure stepped inside. The person walked with quiet confidence, not rushing, not hesitating. The courtroom turned to look at him before he even reached the front. He had an air of calm authority. Someone didn't need to raise his voice or make a scene to be noticed. The teen's eyes softened when he saw the man enter. It was clear he trusted him completely. The judge cleared his throat. "And you are?" The man gave a respectful nod. "I received a call asking me to come. I believe it concerns this case." His tone was polite, but steady, as if he had dealt with serious situations before. The judge motioned him forward. "Please approach the front." The man stepped closer, placing a folder on the table. It wasn't large, but it looked carefully prepared. He glanced at the teen briefly, then turned to the judge. "I apologize for the interruption," he said, "but I have information that I believe you should see before making any final decisions." The judge's eyebrows rose slightly. "Information?" "Yes," the man replied. "Evidence that the teen tried to share earlier but couldn't. He reached out to me because he didn't know how to present it." On his own, the teen kept, his eyes lowered, almost embarrassed that he needed someone else to speak for him. But there was relief in his posture, too. The judge took the folder carefully and opened it. Inside were printed photos, messages, and a small flash drive. His expression slowly changed from neutral to thoughtful. "What exactly am I looking at?" the judge asked. The man explained calmly. On the night of the incident, he wasn't responsible for the damage. He was trying to stop someone else from doing it. He didn't run because he was guilty. He stayed because he wanted to help. Unfortunately, when people arrived, they saw him near the window and assumed he was the one who did it. The shop owner looked surprised. He leaned forward, trying to hear every word. The man continued. "There's a video clip on the flash drive. It's from a camera on a nearby building. Shows exactly what happened." The judge looked from the folder to the man, then to the teen. "Why didn't you say any of this earlier?" The teen finally lifted his eyes. "I tried," he said softly, "but no one listened. People thought I was just making excuses." The courtroom grew still again. There was something painfully honest in his voice, enough to make at least a few people look down in guilt. "Let's see the video," the judge said. A courtroom assistant connected the flash drive to a small screen. Everyone leaned slightly forward, preparing to finally see what had truly happened. The video began with a street view. It was late at night, and only a few lights were on. The shop's front window was visible, along with a couple of nearby buildings. After a few seconds, a figure appeared on the screen. Not the teen, but someone older, moving quickly and nervously. The person approached the shop window, looked around, and then used something small to strike the glass. The sound wasn't clear, but the motion was unmistakable. The window cracked. Seconds later, the teen ran into the frame. He wasn't holding anything. Instead, he was waving his hands, trying to get the person to stop. The other figure shoved him away and ran off. The teen stayed behind, looking shaken, unsure of what to do next. The video paused. A quiet gasp spread through the room. The shop owner leaned back in his chair slowly, his face softening in disbelief. The prosecutor lowered his papers, finally understanding how wrong the assumptions had been. The judge looked stunned, but composed himself quickly. "Is there more?" "Yes," the man said. "There are also messages from someone who saw part of what happened and contacted him afterward. They apologized for not coming forward earlier because they were scared." The judge read through the printed messages carefully. Each one supported the teen's story. After a long moment, the judge let out a slow breath. "Why didn't this come up earlier? Why didn't anyone bring this forward sooner?" The man answered gently because he didn't know how to handle it. He tried to explain, but people didn't take him seriously. And the person who filmed part of it wasn't sure if sharing it would get them in trouble. The judge looked at the teen with a thoughtful expression. "Is all this true?" The teen nodded once, small but firm. "Yes, sir." A wave of guilt washed over the room. People who had come expecting a simple case now felt the weight of their assumptions. Even the judge felt a sting of regret for almost closing the case without giving the boy a full chance to speak. The shop owner cleared his throat. I didn't know," he said quietly. "I thought he was the one who did it. I didn't imagine he was trying to stop someone else. I'm sorry for accusing you like that." The teen shook his head gently. "It's okay. I understand why it looked bad." The judge closed the folder and leaned forward. "This information changes everything. Case can't be decided until all the facts are properly reviewed." The prosecutor nodded slowly. "I agree." His voice was softer now, less certain than before. The man who came to support the teen stepped back, giving him space. He just wanted someone to hear him, he said quietly. The judge studied the boy again. There was something deeply sincere in his expression, something that had been overlooked before. A long silence followed. It wasn't uncomfortable or tense. It was the silence of realization, understanding, and a slow shift in perspective. The courtroom was no longer filled with certainty. Instead, it held something new: respect. Whoever the teen had called, he had trusted the right person. And now, because of that one brave decision, the truth had finally begun to surface. But the case wasn't over yet, and everyone could sense it. Something about the man's calm confidence and the teen's quiet strength hinted that there was more to uncover, more to understand, and more that needed to be said. The judge leaned back in his chair, looking at the teen with a fresh perspective. "We will continue," he said. "There's more to this story than we thought." Everyone in the room knew he was right. The courtroom felt different now. The air wasn't heavy with assumptions anymore. Instead, there was a quiet mix of curiosity and guilt, as if everyone had suddenly realized how easily they had judged the teen before hearing his side. Even the judge, who usually kept a steady and unreadable expression, looked thoughtful. The teen sat a little straighter than before. He wasn't confident or proud, but the weight on his shoulders seemed lighter, not gone, but not crushing him the way it had earlier. The man he had called stood nearby, calm and steady, like someone who understood more than he said. The judge rested his hands on the table and exhaled slowly. "This court will take a short break," he announced. "I need time to review everything properly." People in the courtroom nodded softly, whispering to one another as they stood and stretched. Some stepped outside for air, some stayed seated. Still processing the information they had just seen, the teen remained where he was. His hands were loosely folded now, not in fear but in quiet waiting. The man walked over and sat beside him, not too close, giving him space. "You did well," the man said, in a low voice. The teen looked down. "I wasn't sure you would come." The man smiled gently. "Shh. You asked for help. That's enough reason." The teen nodded, appreciation quietly showing in his eyes. On the other side of the room, the shop owner paced slowly. He rubbed the back of his neck, sighing deeply. It was obvious he felt guilty, maybe even embarrassed for speaking so confidently earlier. He kept glancing at the teen, as if wanting to apologize again, but not knowing how. The prosecutor shuffled through his files once more, now aware that the case wasn't as simple as he had assumed. He looked at the teen occasionally, noticing how different he seemed, calmer, more sincere now that the truth began to unfold. When the judge returned, he carried the folder the man had brought and looked more focused than before. The courtroom grew quiet once again as everyone sat. "Let's continue," the judge said with a nod. Everyone settled into place. The judge turned to the man who brought the evidence. "I want to understand more about how you obtained this information. I want to know why it wasn't brought forward sooner." The man nodded respectfully. "Of course." He explained that he had known the teen for some time, not closely, but enough to know he wasn't the type to break things. He had received a message from the teen on the night of the incident, explaining what happened. But by the time he got the message, the situation had already escalated. The teen was overwhelmed and unsure how to present what he knew. He didn't know the right way to reach the shop owner or the authorities in time. "So," the judge said. Slowly, the teen tried to tell someone. "Yes," the man replied. He didn't hide anything, just didn't know who would listen. The teen looked down, as if he still felt embarrassed. But the judge watched him with a softer expression now. The man continued. "The person who filmed part of it reached out the next day. They said they didn't know what to do. They were scared to be involved. But when they heard he was being blamed, they felt responsible. They agreed to share the video with him." The judge nodded, absorbing the explanation. "May I ask?" The judge said gently, "Why did he call you specifically today? Why not someone else?" The man took a breath. "Because he knows I listen." There was a quiet pause. That simple answer felt heavier than any long explanation. The judge turned his attention back to the teen. "Is that true?" The teen nodded. "Yes, sir. When I'm in trouble or confused. He's the only person I know who doesn't brush me off." There was something honest and simple in his voice that softened even the strictest expressions in the room. The judge leaned back. "Very well, I appreciate your honesty." The shop owner stepped forward slightly, holding his hands together. "Your Honor, may I say something?" The judge allowed it with a nod. The shop owner took a deep breath. I judged him too quickly. I thought he broke my window. I was angry and I didn't think about anything else. I didn't ask questions. I didn't wait to hear his side. I just assumed. He swallowed, then added softly, "I'm sorry for that." The teen looked at him and gave a small nod. It wasn't forgiveness spoken aloud, but it was acceptance. The judge watched the exchange carefully. Then he spoke again, this time to the teen. "Can you tell us, in your own words, what happened that night?" The teen shifted slightly. It wasn't easy for him to speak in front of so many people, but he understood he needed to tell his story clearly. He took a breath. "I was walking home. I passed by the shop, and I saw someone messing with the window. I didn't know who they were, but it looked wrong. I told them to stop. They pushed me and ran. I didn't know what to do, so I stayed. When people came, they saw me near the glass, and I didn't get a chance to explain." His voice shook a little at the end, not from fear, but from remembering how powerless he had felt. The judge nodded slowly. "Did you recognize the person who broke the window?" The teen shook his head. "No, they wore a hood and left too fast." The judge looked at the prosecutor. "We will need to investigate further." The prosecutor nodded. "Absolutely." The man who brought the evidence spoke again. "There may be more footage around the area. If the court allows, I can help contact people I know who live nearby." The judge agreed. That would be helpful. For the first time that day, the courtroom felt united not against the teen, but for the truth. The judge then turned to the teen. "You were very brave to speak up today. Many people your age wouldn't have had the courage to raise their hand and ask for that call. And it's a good reminder to all of us that sometimes we need to pause and listen before making decisions." The teen lowered his gaze again, but this time it wasn't out of fear or shame. It was a quiet humility. Time passed as the judge reviewed the rest of the evidence. The courtroom didn't feel restless. People waited patiently, understanding the importance of what was happening. After a while, the judge set the folder down. "We will temporarily suspend the decision until we gather the remaining information. This case involves more than what we first saw." The shop owner nodded in agreement. The prosecutor did as well. No one argued. Before ending the session, the judge looked at the teen one more time. "If you need help presenting information, you may speak with the court assistant. And if you ever feel unheard, remember that raising your voice respectfully as you did is..." "You're right." The teen nodded again. Something brighter formed in his eyes, not happiness, but relief. The man placed a reassuring hand on the teen's shoulder as they stood. "Let's head outside," he said quietly. The teen followed him toward the exit as people watched them go. For the first time since the hearing began, the teen felt like he wasn't walking alone. Outside the courtroom, the hallway was quiet. The man stopped and turned toward the teen. "You did the right thing," he said. The teen breathed out slowly. "I didn't think anyone would believe me." The man shook his head gently. "People make mistakes. They jump to conclusions. But what matters is that you didn't give up." The teen looked down at his hands. "I just didn't want to be blamed for something I didn't do." "I know," the man replied. "And now they know the truth is more complicated than they thought." The teen nodded, feeling the truth of those words. After a moment, the teen asked quietly, "Do you think they'll find the person who really did it?" The man paused. "Maybe, or maybe they'll find more clues. What matters now is that you're not alone in this anymore." They walked slowly toward the building's entrance. The teen felt a mixture of exhaustion and relief. It had been a long day, but for the first time in a while, he felt seen. As they stepped outside, sunlight greeted them. It was warm, gentle, and comforting, something the teen hadn't felt all morning. He closed his eyes for a moment and breathed in deeply. Everything wasn't solved yet. The case was still open. The truth was still unfolding. But the fear that had followed him for days no longer felt so heavy, all because of one phone call. And the courage to make it. The moment the person on the phone walked into the courtroom, the atmosphere shifted in a way no one expected. People who had been whispering suddenly went quiet, and even the judge seemed to straighten in his seat. It wasn't that the visitor looked intimidating or powerful, it was simply the calm confidence they carried. As if they had arrived with something that would change the direction of everything that had happened so far. The teen stood near the door, almost unsure whether to step forward or step back. He had made the call with shaky hands, not even sure if the person would answer, let alone show up. But seeing them walk in gave him a sense of hope he hadn't felt all day. He watched as they made their way toward the front of the room, folder tucked tightly under their arm. The judge cleared his throat and asked who they were. The visitor introduced themselves politely and explained that they had relevant information regarding the incident everyone thought they understood. Their voice was calm, steady, and respectful, and it didn't take long for the judge to allow them to approach. The courtroom remained quiet. Even people who had come just to watch seemed to lean forward, sensing something important was about to be revealed. The visitor opened the folder and placed a small stack of papers on the table in front of the judge. They also pulled out a small drive, explaining that it contained camera footage recorded on the night of the incident. The judge looked at the teen, and back at the visitor, then at the papers. For a moment, everything seemed to pause, an unspoken tension humming in the air. The judge finally gestured for the bailiff to take the drive and load it up on the courtroom screen. When the screen flickered to life, the room grew even quieter. Footage from a security camera began to play. It showed the outside of the store where the damage had occurred. A few people in the audience shifted in their seats. Some squinted at the screen, trying to make out the figures. The teen's stomach tightened. He knew what the footage showed. He remembered the moment clearly. It had been a confusing, stressful night, one he had hoped would be sorted out quickly. Instead, it had led him here. As the footage continued, the judge leaned forward. There, on the screen, was the teen, but not doing what everyone had assumed. Instead of causing any damage, he was trying to stop someone else. He was standing near another figure, someone older and bigger than him. Who was the one actually causing trouble? The judge paused the video and asked the visitor to explain. They stepped forward and revealed that they had been nearby that night and had seen the whole situation. They had tried to speak to the store owner earlier, but the owner had been so upset about the damage that they refused to hear anything else. The visitor then explained that they only found out about the teen's court date hours earlier, which was why they had rushed to come as soon as the teen called. They wanted the court to understand that the teen had not been responsible for the damage at all. In fact, he had tried to prevent it. A few soft murmurs rippled through the audience. The store owner sat still, their mouths slightly open as they stared at the screen. They had been so certain about what they thought they saw that they never imagined they could be wrong. The judge played the footage again. This time, from the moment the older figure ran up to the store. The teen was already on the sidewalk, talking to someone out of the frame. When he saw what was happening, he tried to intervene. He didn't succeed. The person causing the damage pushed him aside and ran off before anyone else noticed. Seeing it all in motion made everything clear. The judge's expression softened as he turned to the teen. The boy wasn't the troublemaker he had been painted as. He had been in the wrong place at the wrong time, trying to do the right thing. The visitor then handed over additional evidence messages, time-stamped photos, even a short statement from someone else who had been there that night. Each piece supported the same truth. The teen had been misjudged. The judge took his time reviewing everything. The courtroom waited, silent but full of emotion. Some people looked guilty for assuming the worst. Others looked relieved. A few looked angry, maybe at themselves, maybe at the whole situation. After several minutes, the judge looked up. His face didn't show frustration or impatience anymore. Instead, it showed understanding. He addressed the store owner gently, explaining that they might have made an honest mistake in identifying the teen. The owner nodded slowly, still staring at the screen as if trying to replay the night in their mind. The judge then turned to the teen and asked if he had ever tried to tell anyone his side of the story. The teen nodded and explained that he had tried, but no one believed him. People saw him standing near the scene and assumed he was part of the trouble. He didn't have proof. The person who caused the damage disappeared before anyone else arrived. Hearing the teen's voice shake, as he spoke made the room feel even heavier. It wasn't anger that filled the air, it was sympathy. The judge listened carefully, and for the first time that day, the teen felt truly heard. The visitor added a final note. They explained that the teen had actually reached out to them earlier because he felt alone and overwhelmed. They knew the teen wasn't the type to cause damage, so when he said he needed help, they didn't hesitate. The judge took a deep breath and leaned back in his chair. He thanked the visitor for coming forward and for providing the information the court desperately needed. Then he looked at the teen again, this time with a reassuring expression. The judge wasn't ready to make his final decision yet, not until everything had been fully reviewed.